that they're so brazenly doing this. What is your reaction to that?
Well, Piers, my reaction is that I think it's reprehensible. And I think it is part of a much wider pattern of behaviour driven by partly social media, but in particular the hyperpolarisation of American politics, which is part of a big trend of legitimising violence, of making violence an acceptable means of prosecuting your politics. Where I would disagree, possibly with you, possibly with other members of the panel, is that this is somehow just confined to the left, or the idea that this is just happening on the left. Yes, there have been examples of that. We've just seen it just now. I was disgusted at the reaction to what happened with Luigi Manzioni earlier in the year.
What happens when confidence meets structure in live debate? That's the moment we're analyzing here. British journalist Lewis Goodall enters Piers Morgan Uncensored and immediately challenges the central claim being advanced by conservative voices on the panel. His intervention shifts the debate from blame assignment to system analysis, examining how political rhetoric escalates on all sides, not just one. Before we break it down, comment your location below and subscribe to Western Confused Brit for more real-time analysis of high-stakes political exchanges. Let's review the clip, then dissect why Goodall's framing changed the direction of the entire conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Piers. It's obviously still very raw for a lot of us. I'm finding myself very caught between, on the one hand, wanting to honor his legacy of unity through debate and coming together to take down the temperature, and then wanting to honor his legacy of telling the truth. And the truth is, this is not a both sides issue. The killer killed him, according to police reports, because he found Charlie Kirk to be spreading hate. This is a view shared by every single prominent Democrat. Yes, there are people on Blue Sky advocating for violence, but what actually caused this was the utterly quotidian, utterly ubiquitous demonization of the political opposition from the left. And it has just led to violence because they said the other side were Hitler and Nazis. They said that speech is violence. To combine those two things together is to sign the death warrant of prominent conservatives. And that is what we are seeing again and again and again. And it is utterly facetious to suggest that there is any comparison between political violence on both sides. Every example they bring is not actually showing that, whether it's Governor Shapiro, whose attempted assassination was from a Free Palestine leftist, or whether it was the Minnesota assassinations, which were from somebody who said he was operating at the behest of Democrat Governor Tim Walz. There is a culture among Democrats at the highest level to suggest that their political opposition are a danger, and that suggests that their lives are forfeit. And I want to come together. I do. I love what Shank said. It brought tears to my eyes. I had to reach for a tissue while you were playing Charlie's words. But at the same time, we cannot unite with people who are lying to our faces about who we are, who will not take responsibility for the fact that they suggested that we are Nazis because of totally legitimate views that reflect the majority of Americans. So what I say is, let the left say we were wrong. It is legitimate to vote for Donald Trump. It is legitimate to be pro-life. It is legitimate to believe that there are only two genders, and we were wrong to suggest that that was not the case. We were wrong to say that that is hateful. When they say that, I am waiting with open arms to take down the temperature.
Lewis Goodall, you are on the left, and the one thing that's really struck me about this, I don't dispute for a moment that there are people on the far right that commit a lot of acts of violence and can be equally hateful. That's my personal view. But I have been truly shocked, genuinely truly shocked, by the sheer enormity of brazen, dehumanized calls on social media from people on the woke left, the sort of far left, which has been calling themselves progressive, but in my view are the opposite. But how they've reacted to Charlie Kirk's death, we've got a little mashup of some of it.
Ding dong, the witch is dead. We think that Charlie Kirk just got shot in the neck. Ay, ooh, ah, ooh.
I would say pour one out for Kirky boy, but I don't waste good beer on little bitches.
Charlie Kirk just got put down like a fucking dog in Utah, and I could not be happier.
I will not ever feel bad when bad people get what the fuck they deserve.
Fucking stoked right now. You wanna know why I'm so fucking stoked? Fucking yeah!
CK got AK'd. And he's gone.
He did say that gun deaths were an acceptable side effect of gun rights.
We got Charlie in the neck. We got Charlie in the neck.
There are hundreds, thousands maybe, more examples like this. But we've seen teachers, we've seen hospital executives, we've seen people who want to run places like the Oxford University Union, for example, and so on, all coming out with similar gleeful celebration at the murder of a 31-year-old father of two young children. I find it utterly despicable, but also quite terrifying, actually, that they're so brazenly doing this. What is your reaction to that?
Well, Piers, my reaction is that I think it's reprehensible. And I think it is part of a much wider pattern of behaviour driven by partly social media, but in particular the hyperpolarisation of American politics, which is part of a big trend of legitimising violence, of making violence an acceptable means of prosecuting your politics. Where I would disagree, possibly with you, possibly with other members of the panel, is that this is somehow just confined to the left, or the idea that this is just happening on the left. Yes, there have been examples of that. We've just seen it just now. I was disgusted at the reaction to what happened with Luigi Manzioni earlier in the year. Very similar sort of phenomenon.
Yeah.
But let's see where it's happened in other parts of the right. Do you remember what happened with Paul Pelosi, for example? Nancy Pelosi's husband almost killed to death. What was the reaction of not just some random left-wing accounts, not some teacher, not whatever, but Don Jr., Donald Trump Jr. He decided to put out a picture of a hammer and some underpants and say, I've got my Paul Pelosi Halloween costume tonight. This is the wider legitimization of violence that we're seeing. And let's just have a look. I mean, let's talk about some accounts that I've been looking at. You've been horrified what you've seen on Twitter, some stuff I've seen on Blue Sky, some stuff I've seen on X over the course of the last 24 hours. Liberals can never be allowed to run this country again. How can you coexist with people that want to murder you? If you vote Democrat at this point, you're a demonic, evil person. I will support whatever saves our country. Trump has a blank check as far as I'm concerned. I could go on, I could go on, and I could go on. And I could give a list of all of the many occasions we've seen in recent years of right-wing, hard-right, far-right terrorism that we saw against what happened in Minnesota. I mentioned Paul Pelosi, Josh Shapiro. In fact, I disagree with just as a matter of fact. Investigators found in the Shapiro case online activity and writings that included extreme right-wing, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and rhetoric against Shapiro, who is, of course, Jewish and a Democrat, and in Michigan. And even in the last 24 hours or so, what do we see from Laura Loomer on Ilhan Omar, the Democratic Congresswoman, Laura Loomer being a very senior MAGA person? At the end of the day, everyone needs to realise that Ilhan Omar is a bloodthirsty Muslim terrorist sympathiser who has no place in our country. Her presence in Congress is a national security threat, and she's an enemy from within. So please, the idea that there is some sort of asymmetry on this, the fact of the matter is, America, and indeed the UK as well, we've got into a really negative cycle here, where basically the temperature goes up, and it goes up, and it goes up. And then sometimes some of the people who are responsible for that turn around and go, God, I can't believe it's so hot in here. Everyone needs to pull back from the brink. Social media needs to actually be reformed and needs to be changed. Elon Musk has been pretty responsible for some of this stuff that we've seen as well. So let's not pretend. If we pretend that this is just a problem of the left or of liberalism or of wokeism or whatever you want to say, this problem is not going to be any better or get any better.
After the full exchange, one question remains. Are we analyzing the same record? The panel attempted to frame political hostility as a one-sided phenomenon. Lewis Goodall challenged that premise directly. His argument was not a defense of any extreme behavior. He stated clearly that celebrating violence or tragedy is unacceptable, regardless of ideology or party. Where he diverged was on consistency. He identified a pattern, demanding accountability from opponents while exempting allies from the same standard. That observation could not be refuted in real time because the examples he cited rhetoric from across the political spectrum, amplified by influential leaders over the last decade, complicated the narrative the panel had set. Goodall's contribution was context. He showed that escalation is systemic, not isolated. When political leaders frame opponents as existential threats, language degrades, tribalism increases, and the standard for public discourse drops on all sides. The panel's discomfort when those examples were introduced revealed the central issue. Selective outrage cannot sustain a credible argument about accountability. At its core, this moment demonstrates why modern debates fracture. One side focuses on individual incidents. The other focuses on patterns and incentives. Goodall forced the conversation toward the latter. Whether you agree with his conclusion or not, he reintroduced a standard that is increasingly rare. The same rules applied to every side without exception. If this breakdown added clarity, like the video and subscribe to Western Confused Brit for more structured analysis of debates that shape public discourse.